work.
Crazy.
Thank you.
Crazy car ride.
Guys, the skyline, I looked and we were driving, Dawn picked me up from the airport this morning, we were driving and I said, Minneapolis is like that part. And the rest of it was, you know, all over here. And so I am a city girl, but I am a small city girl. And I have my husband and 4 children, and we live just outside of Minneapolis, actually in a rural area, which is really nice. It doesn't take us long to get into the city, but it's nice to kind of be in a safe area where you can see the stars at night. So that's where we are. I am the president of Personhood Alliance Education, and that is the educational arm of Personhood Alliance. That is a national organization that has 23 different independent pro-life organizations affiliated with it across the country. And all of those organizations right now and for the past 5 years, I believe, is that right, John? Yeah, 5 years, have been pursuing personhood as not only a legal strategy for restoring the right to life, but also a moral foundation for shifting the culture. So my organization, the education side, helps our affiliates by providing educational materials and training programs and all kinds of resources that they need to get the job done. And our affiliates do many different things. Some of them are right to life organizations, some of them are advocacy organizations, for example, for disabled children, for post-abortive women. So our affiliates kind of run the gamut. They're involved politically, some of them are not involved politically. A lot of them are new. We're growing very, very fast. We've just welcomed, I believe, 8 new affiliates over the last 6 months. So Personhood is a movement that is growing very rapidly in this country right now, and I want to introduce to you tonight what personhood is. What do we say, when we say personhood, what do we mean? What does that mean to people? I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about what personhood looks like in practice. How do we actually apply this in the culture? Does it work? What does it look like? I want to talk also about how it's advancing right now and what issues that personhood speaks into. And it's not just abortion. And I think that's really gonna, I hope, kind of expand your boundaries a little bit tonight. Everybody thinks personhood is very much anti-abortion. We are. But there are a lot of other issues that we are involved in, and so I want to introduce you to those tonight as well. So I think we're going to jump right into what personhood is, and I'm going to talk for about 20-30 minutes, and then I really wanted to spend the rest of the time, whatever time I have, answering questions and just having some dialogue with you guys, because I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions about the information that I'm going to present. So I want to open that up for you, and I want to be able to have a discussion. So that's important to me tonight, and I want you to know that I'm not just here, you know, just saying, hey, this is what we're doing with personhood. I want to hear from you, and I want to answer your questions. I want to talk about things that are practical. I want to talk about things that are happening right now, realistically. What can we do, and what are we doing? Okay. So. It's a legal strategy, it's a moral philosophy, it's a cultural shifting movement that really is based in both faith and reason. So there is a religious component to personhood. Personhood Alliance is a faith-based organization, but there also is the scientific and reason basis for human rights, for personhood as well. So that's important to understand, that it's just not just a religious issue, it's also a human rights issue. I think everybody in here knows that, right? Everybody knows that. Personhood declares that our equality is based on our humanness, and that means that nothing can change the biological fact that we're human, no matter what. No matter where we were born, no matter our developmental stage, no matter our how society views us, no matter our life circumstances, no matter whether we're even wanted by our own parents or not. We still have intrinsic value, we have worth. We are human, and that never changes. Personhood affirms that the right to life applies without exception to every single human being that is alive. Personhood is also a consistent application of principles. That means that our policies and our political strategies match. That we say that there is no law that can dehumanize or discriminate against any human being ever. There is no law that can discriminate or dehumanize any human being at any time. Human beings are made in the image of God. We are all made by our Creator in His image, and Personhood acknowledges that straightforward out front. And we use a specific design, 5-element design, as our foundation that's found in Genesis 1:26 through 28. That's known as the doctrine of Imago Dei. And those 5 elements are life, marriage, family, sexuality, and gender. And we rest on the belief that those 5 elements are interwoven, and that an attack on any one of those elements is an attack on the whole human person. All of those things are connected, and we see those connections, we educate people about those connections, and we help people understand that holistic view of the human person. Personhood is the undoing of the culture of death. It is, and that's why it's such a formidable threat, not only politically, but culturally. They are afraid of personhood, and we know this by the language. We know this by the way they talk about it. It's different. They talk about personhood differently than they talk about some other efforts to stop the killing of preborn children in particular. And so we know it is an enemy of theirs, and it's been really the driving force throughout history to undo the greatest injustices that this country has ever faced. And so it's doing that now, we're doing it at the present. We will continue to do that as attacks on the human person come, and they are coming fast. And there are new ones that are coming down the pipeline that I'm going to talk to you about tonight too. So our question, I think, for any advocate for any practice that destroys human life or destroys human dignity can never be, at what point should we limit the destruction? At what point should we decide to prohibit it? What about this situation? What about that situation? Our question has to be, are all lives equally valuable, yes or no? That's it. That is the question that lies at the basis of everything that we are fighting in our culture today. Does life matter? Does every single life matter or not? So if we're going to say yes, and I think everybody in this room would say yes, that all human life is equally valuable, right? If we say that, then I'm going to propose to you tonight that we have to stand on the principled, consistent foundation of personhood to fight the attacks that are coming against all human life. So I don't think we can fight relativism with relativism, okay? So it's like taking a dropper of water to a forest fire, really. We can do this all day and we're not going to make a difference because it's all relative anyway. So where is the absolute truth? And we believe and know, because it is biblical, that the absolute truth is personhood, is the fact that we are made in God's image, and therefore we have intrinsic value, we have inalienable human rights that no government has the right to take away. We can never sacrifice some humans for incremental political gains. We can't do it. That's a tough one. We have to declare that our rights are inherent, that our rights are essential to being human, and that they don't change, because our humanness doesn't change, and that's what makes us equal. Everybody in this room, if you look around, everybody is different. How can we possibly be equal to each other? We're equal because we are human. We're humans, and nothing ever changes that. So we have to bring moral courage into every single situation that we find ourselves in. And in particular, that moral courage has to come into politics, but it also has to come into our conversations, has to come into the relationships, it has to come into everything we deal with culturally and how we address what's happening in the culture. So I want to talk for a few minutes about the different situations that human life is directly targeted. So what are those situations that personhood speaks into? I mentioned at the beginning that it's not just anti-abortion, right? Obviously, number one, we are definitely against abortion, but I want to give you 6 tonight, 6 issues that personhood directly speaks into. Number one, personhood is anti-abortion, right? That's a pretty obvious one. So the reason the pro-life movement focuses so intently on abortion, I think, is not because we're pro-birth, as we're accused of being, right? We're so focused on being anti-abortion because preborn children are completely left out of the equality conversation. You know, they don't exist. We gloss over them, our laws pretend they don't exist, our courts pretend they don't exist. And so they're just not there, and so someone has to be their voice. Their very existence is denied. But our focus in the 20th century, so the 1900s, right, on being anti-abortion, which has been very needed, very necessary, very noble, very urgent, right? Thousands and thousands of children are dying every day. This is a big deal. We want to come against abortion. But what has happened on all of those decades of being anti-abortion is that we have not adequately expanded to really into number 2, and that's what I want to talk about now. Number 2 is the unethical advances in science and technology. Okay, so I want to give you some examples of some of the things that are happening now and some of the things that are coming toward us that we have to be prepared for. So the creation, the exploitation, and the destruction of human embryos for experimentation is massive in America and across the world. In Europe, we hear about it. The drive to cure disease and to actually improve consumer products is driving this. We're using living human beings at their embryonic stage for experimentation. This is an immediate threat to human life that's happening right now. And we're doing things about it, we're coming against it, but it is very, very massive. It is much bigger than abortion, much, much bigger. We have to also specifically consider, and this one is tough, but the destruction leveled by the assisted reproductive technology industry. And I'm talking about IVF. I'm talking about we're making 3-parent embryos now. All kinds of weird scientific sci-fi stuff is going on. And that includes now self-cloning, 1-parent embryos, so I can clone myself if I can't have a child or don't want a man to have a child with. I can clone myself. They can now turn a fertilized egg into 2 of the same. It's wild what is happening. Designer babies, those are coming. We have the technology to do that now. We've not been nudged far enough. Also, artificial wombs, those are coming. External wombs to grow humans in. Those are the things of movies, of sci-fi films. These things are being planned, or their technology is already here, and they have just not gotten the culture to the place where it's accepted yet. So the focus here really, I think, is the desire to parent. This is very emotional. This is very personal to people. It's very difficult. Infertility is very difficult for people. But right now what we're seeing is that desire to parent is ignoring the millions, literally, that are being destroyed in the process of that happening. So that's a tough conversation, and personhood speaks truth and love into those situations too. Other emerging technologies pose a real threat to human personhood as well. Everybody here probably has heard of AI, right? Do you guys know what AI is?
Artificial intelligence.
Okay, yes. Cyborgs. Do you know what cyborgs are? Those are human-robot combinations, so enhanced humans, physically enhanced. A lot of times in movies you'll see some sort of thing underneath the arm, or right, so a cyborg, the weird, where it becomes like a helmet, or this crazy Terminator stuff, right? So we're seeing human-animal hybrids that are now being produced in labs, taking human DNA and injecting it into an animal and creating a hybrid for experimentation, then killing it, not obviously letting it live to a point where it actually develops into some kind of weird creature, but they are creating them and experimenting on them. Yet. Absolutely, yet is the word. Yet is the word, unfortunately. So these things aren't just movie plots anymore. There's a movement called, and I don't know if you guys have heard this, probably have, the transhumanist movement. So this movement, and NASA, by the way, are involved with the transhumanist movement. They're planning a future where genetic enhancements, right, things that we can do to the human genome in the lab, and human enhancements in terms of implantables will actually converge with different technologies to create a race of posthumans. So we're evolving ourselves beyond our human bodies, and we're going to become something else that's never been discovered yet. And so that is the direction that the scientific community is going right now. So we need to understand this. One of the things that's being used in the development of a lot of these technologies is something called Crispr. Has anybody here heard of Crispr? It's a Crispr, C-R-I-S-P-R, it's an acronym, and it's a crazy name that I can't pronounce, so I'm not gonna try. But it's a gene editing tool. And for the first time, we have genetically modified humans that were born, and they were born in China. I believe it was last year, end of last year, and they were twins. And their DNA were modified at the embryonic stage to prevent them, or to make them immune to the AIDS virus. That was the experiment. It was kind of a rogue Chinese researcher who injected, or who messed with their DNA using this CRISPR tool so that they would be born and would never get AIDS. And so they were born. And then after they were born, the researcher kind of said, oh, you know what? I think we might have altered their intelligence level at the same time. So there's all kinds of problems when we start getting into monkeying with the human genome. As you can imagine, there is Pandora's box there. So the CRISPR tool really is this tool, it's eugenic, right? So we can now take the human genome and we can engineer it faster and better and more precisely than scientists have ever been able to do that before in the history of eugenics. And if you guys I know here know about what eugenics is, we know about Margaret Sanger, we know her agenda. The only difference between the eugenicists of the early 20th century and the eugenicists now is technology. That's the only difference. It hasn't gone away. It never went away. It had to rebrand itself after World War II, after everybody found out what ultimately led to Hitler's atrocities. That was eugenics. So it rebranded itself. It went underground. It came back as family planning. It came back as population control, and now we're looking at the future of eugenics in the Genome Project and in human genetic engineering. So the problem here is that it's being proposed as a way to cure disease. We want to be able to cure disease. We want to cure cancer. We don't want, if we can identify the genes that people would be born with, so we could eliminate major death rates in the country based on disease, that sounds like a really good idea, doesn't it? I mean, that sounds like something that we would go forward and do. But the problem is when you start to get in there, you start looking at, you know what, we could really create a better human race. We could create more intelligent people. We could create certain physical abilities. You get the designer babies. We could really start to create a society that we want. And that is very, very dangerous for us to be doing. So what we have seen in Personhood and what my organization is doing is we watch and we do a lot of research and we start to speak into some of these areas. And I want to share with you some of the questions that are being debated by many experts in many different industries right now. And these are industries we all are familiar with and are consumers of, including technology, including really about everything that we touch, okay? So all of these people are coming together and they're talking about what's going to happen. So I want to share some of these questions with you. Will enhanced humans, again, humans who are either genetically enhanced or enhanced with some kind of device or computer inside them, will they be more valuable to society than humans that are not enhanced? And what are the implications of that? How are we going to deal with that in terms of class? Right? So will enhancements be declared a right? Is this going to be a right that government is going to invent that everybody has to have equal access to? This is something that's being debated right now. How are we going to ensure that everybody can have access to enhancements? What traits will be good, and who is going to decide that? Who's going to decide what good is? What happens to diversity, real beauty of human creation? What's going to happen to that if we start messing with, well, you know what? Let's take all the red-haired people and not have them anymore. Let's, you know, what will it be? What will be good and what will not be good? And how can we ever fight against that if the people in power in our society are the ones making the decisions? Just like now, we're just dealing with looking at the human genome in the same way as the government deals with many other things, many other decisions they make for us. And this last one seems a little scary, but it's very real. Will the rights of AI compete with the rights of human beings? What's going to happen when AI takes over our economy? What's going to happen to income? We're already talking about UBI. A lot of the Democrat candidates are talking about universal basic income. It's because they know that this is being talked about and this is coming, and they want to create the ground floor so that this can move forward. There's a lot of this going on behind the scenes, and we have a whole page on our website about these future technologies and these emerging technologies that are happening right now. If you go to personhood.org and you click on issues, that's my area of the website, that's the education organization. You'll find science and technology as one of the pages, and you can look up for yourself. We have information there. You can certainly reach out to us. I'll have business cards here tonight too if you want to discuss anything in particular. So we're entering really dangerous times. That was just number 2. So number 3. Personhood applies to end-of-life issues. You guys know this right now because you are battling an assisted suicide and euthanasia bill. So of course, end-of-life issues deals with assisted suicide and euthanasia, but Personhood also speaks into conscious protections for medical professionals. We speak against disability discrimination when it comes to these types of issues. This isn't just about the elderly. Everybody here knows that. This is about any stage of life. End of life does not mean elderly. So Personhood has a voice in practices related to poor prenatal diagnosis. We have a voice related to hospice care, the proper giving of food and water. We see that a lot lately. Medical kidnappings are happening more and more. These are all personhood issues. This is about the value of human life. The treatment of born children with disability and disease. Are they being treated? And the answer is no. A lot of them are not. They're discriminated against, and we have some affiliates. Our affiliate in Michigan deals with this issue in particular because their daughter has trisomy 18, I believe, and they have fought not only to keep her from being aborted, but to actually keep her alive now that she has been born. So it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. And of course, infanticide. You know, we're post-birth abortion. This is what they've been talking about for over a decade, and now the masks are off and we're talking about it openly. And at least we're talking about it openly, so we can see what the thinking is here. We can see the ideology, we can recognize it for what it is. So number 4, personhood also applies to humans who are trafficked. Humans are not commodities. We are not objects. We are not property. We have been there. We have done that. Okay, we're valuable. We have worth because we're made in the image of God. We all know this. Human trafficking, whether it's for sex or labor or organ trafficking, is a core violation of our personhood. And luckily, thankfully, there are both secular and religious organizations who are standing up in the prevention of human trafficking, in going in and rescuing the victims of trafficking, and in their healing, which often takes a lifetime for them to go through. So our society is coming around this issue more and more, just like it's coming around end of life issues and abortion. So these things we're more familiar with. So this is interesting. I think you guys will think this is interesting. Number 5, personhood is concerned with attempts to define legal personhood in other ways besides human. Okay? So the non-human personhood movement is a really, really big deal across the world right now. And it has made leaps and bounds in America. In other countries, in particular, they're assigning legal personhood to rivers and lakes and forests. In fact, in America, just a couple months ago, Lake Erie was granted legal personhood by some folks in Ohio. Yeah. Also, attempts to confer personhood on animals like elephants and chimpanzees. That's been going on for a while, but that's really coming to a head right now. There's a lot of momentum in the animal rights movement right now to grant legal personhood. In fact, I believe it was the New York Supreme Court last year heard a chimpanzee personhood case. They denied it, but one of the justices spoke very well of chimpanzee personhood, and so they signaled that they would be ready, or that a court in New York would be ready to take that back in maybe a year or so. So it's here in New York, it's elsewhere across the country too, but they are really, really pushing animal personhood right now. Peter Singer, anybody here know who Peter Singer is? He is the leader, one of the key leaders of the non-human personhood movement / animal rights movement, and he argues for personhood to be granted only to certain human beings. So not just animals and elements of nature, but only some humans. Humans that are self-aware, humans that can feel pain, humans that can make their own decisions, humans that can plan for their future. So at a certain cognitive level, and obviously we're not just talking about the preborn not having personhood, but we're talking about born children up to age 2, and they are arguing specifically for not considering them persons so they can be killed if they have disabilities, if they have some sort of genetic disease. So this is crazy what is happening. These conversations are happening. So obviously it excludes also people with dementia, people with Alzheimer's, people with developmental disabilities, people with mental health issues. So a lot of people are suddenly not people anymore, according to Peter Singer, according to the non-human personhood movement. On the other hand, though, non-human personhood includes artificial intelligence. So right now, legal personhood is being sought for AI. And at this point, AI, we're looking at self-driving cars. We have those, right? Their corporations are looking at granting legal personhood to self-driving cars because that car eventually will have to make a decision. Do I hit the child or do I hit the dog? So if I decide to avoid the dog and hit the child, who's going to be liable for that? Well, corporations want to give AI personhood, so they are not liable for that decision that AI makes. So that's that's one example of
That's coming soon.
they're ensuring conscience protections for medical professionals. A lot of our affiliates are working on that. Battling assisted suicide and euthanasia bills. Personhood in New York is leading the charge on that right now. And also that whole battle includes the POLST and the MOLST programs, which our affiliate in Ohio was successful in getting one of those shut down last year. And those are programs that just open the door to the legal killing of the elderly and the disabled. Our affiliates are also introducing personhood language in key pieces of legislation, and sometimes that means into field homicide bills. Getting personhood language into those bills so that a precedent can be set in that state to then refer to. Personhood laws, of course, bringing forward just, you know what, yes, this is a human person, that's a personhood bill. Bills against embryonic research and human experimentation. We have an affiliate in Mississippi that was educated enough about this that knew a bill was coming and brought it forward to say we have to stop this. And unfortunately, the Republicans there laughed at him and said, well, this is crazy. What are you talking about? And they wouldn't even listen to what he had to say, and that bill passed because no one knew and no one wanted to be educated on it. So there's a fight there too, for sure. Our affiliates, some of them are pursuing ballot initiatives like state constitutional amendments, and this becomes very important as the pro-abortion lobby comes into blue courts in red states. That is a new strategy. I'd say new in the past couple years. That's a new strategy that they've been using where they can't get the legislatures in red states, so they'll go into the courts and they'll declare a right to abortion. They'll get the Supreme Court in that state to declare a right to abortion in the state constitution, and then they go and they have to fight. They have to fight that. That's happening in Iowa. That's happening in Kansas. So that's on the battlefield too. Some of our affiliates are pursuing court battles. The one coming out of Alabama, Ryan Majors, who is suing for wrongful death on behalf of his aborted child, who's suing the abortion facility. How many of you guys have heard of that case coming out of Alabama? That is Personhood Alabama. That is our affiliate. That is the legal team is behind that. We also have another case in Colorado that we believe may be going to the Supreme Court, and that deals with a frozen embryo case and a divorce. And for the first time, we may be able to actually not call them property and make it a custody case, which says that they are people. So there are things like that that our affiliates are working on as well. And of course, and I'm really excited to bring this to you guys tonight, our new grassroots initiative that we just rolled out that's been kind of going in the background for a little while called Sanctuaries for Life. Did anybody hear about the county in North Carolina that was declared a sanctuary county? That was Personhood North Carolina. So before I get into the Sanctuaries for Life, I wanted to do that just for a few minutes and talk about the different steps in that project and talk a little bit about how that works and why we're doing it. I want to just stop because I know I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at you. And I want to see if you have any questions, if you want to have any discussion right now before I get into that. Yes?
When you said about the impact of transgender, and you're doing studies to see what the results might be in the future, do you stand for against transgender?
Yes. In particular,
Emphatically,
yes, absolutely, yes. We know that God designed two genders, and male and female, and we also know that there is great harm that's coming to children. We know that there is now research that is starting to come out. It's hard because this generation of children is being brought through. They're being given puberty blockers, hormone therapy, surgery. All this is happening, and it's happening now. So there's not a lot of longevity studies to really look at. But what we're trying to do is pull the things that are coming out. There are many doctors in the community who are trying to speak out, who are being silenced, that this is not good. The American Academy of Pediatrics has come out against the transgender children phenomenon. So that also includes the drag kid phenomenon, where transgenderism crosses into the drag queen story hour phenomenon that we're fighting right now too. So yes, we are very much against the harm that does to kids.
And there's a transgender group that has come out, that has gone through conversion therapy, that regret.
Can't hear you.
Yes.
They regret, a transgender group, you know, they're blocked, but they're coming out, they deeply regret that they went through this, and some of them for many years, some as maybe 50, not 50, 25 years. And they totally regret it, they're miserable people, they're trying to come out, they're stonewalled many, many times by the press, by the government, by, like even conversion therapy in many states, they're blocked, they're made out, or you just can't do it. But there is information coming out of the harm they do with people that have been transgender.
There is. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. Walter Hare is a big speaker. We saw him a couple years ago, met him in Cleveland, and it was a God thing. I ended up on the shuttle bus to the airport with he and his wife, and had a wonderful conversation about their experience, and it was really eye-opening for me. I got to ask him a lot of questions that, he didn't talk about in his presentation, so it's heartbreaking what he's been through, but he's, out the other side, and he's healed, and he's talking to people, and he's trying to reach out into the community. But anybody that comes out of that community is never accepted back in. So there's a draw in, but there's never a sending out with the same blessing, if you will, as the welcoming that's done to them. And so they are ostracized, and they have no support because often their family has abandoned them as well, their friends. And so that's why we see the suicide rate so horribly high for people who particularly decided to have the surgery to become the other gender.
I know this is, not everybody is on board with me with this, but my question to you is how deeply are you aware or involved with the experimentation that's been going on through vaccines? And in New York State, they just decided across the board that 26,000 students who are unvaccinated would not be, no student would be allowed to go to school without being vaccinated up to 19 different vaccines. And it's a whole big, huge issue, and I know not everybody agrees, but I was just curious about the personhood aspect of it, and there's been so much research, and I wish I could remember who had sent me a video that I know I sent to you guys, linking, it was two women speaking, it was a doctor and someone else, about this link between the pro-life issue and being aware of what's going on with vaccines, and I'm just wondering if Personhood has anything whatsoever.
Yeah, so the Personhood Alliance does not take an official position on whether to vaccinate or not, right? But we do talk an awful lot about the fetal tissue or fetal cells that are used in the production of vaccines, and we praise the different organizations that are seeking alternatives for that. There are alternatives there are ethical alternatives for a lot of the vaccines being made in Canada, but they're not allowed to be imported into the United States. And so we do speak on the unethical nature of vaccines.
I was thinking about the transgender, because there's definitely a link to the DNA that are in that fetal tissue and what they're putting in. So
yeah, and it's really interesting because you'll see as we talk about this that all these issues converge because they all are about the person, right? And so what we see is that the transgender issue is coming into the discussion about the emerging technologies, because what that agenda, that community is trying to do, or the people who are advocating for their rights, is they're coming into what's called the Techno-Progressive Declaration, and it's a declaration that was made worldwide. I believe it was in Sweden or Switzerland a couple years ago, where they came together and they said, okay, as we're moving society forward, who's going to be involved? Who's going to be the special groups? Who's going to get the rights? And the transgender movement is positioning and jockeying itself to make sure that being able to alter DNA to choose a gender or change a gender at some point is a right that they will have. And so that is coming into the very foundation of the emerging technology move that's coming.
scary stuff.
Yes, I'll get to you next. And actually, you know what? she had her hand up first. Do you mind if I? Sorry.
I was wondering, I think that the most important part that you had brought out was the seeing of people as non-persons. And that's what enabled the Third Reich to gain power and to be able to kill as many as they did, the way they did. And today in China, with the treatment of the Falun Gong, millions are taken and are entirely, their bodies are depleted of every organ that they can use and harvest. But that's not coming out in every newspaper.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, organ harvesting is a form of human trafficking, and in that situation, they are being forced, obviously, because they're being experimented on, just like the Holocaust.
And also with abortion, they're treating the embryo as a non-person, it's just tissue. And that whole thinking process has to be changed.
Yes, and again, I think the only way that we can win all of these different battles, if we start talking about personhood, we start talking about the whole human person and how that applies in all these issues, because you can't talk about abortion without talking about pretty much everything else that touches it. Pornography, trafficking, all of these things are hooked together because they're evil. They're evil at the very core. And the only way that you can flush out evil is with good, is with truth. You were talking about it earlier. Speak the truth. Be where the truth is. Stand on that consistent foundation, and that's what the Personhood movement is trying to do.
And the power behind that is prayer.
Yes,
That also has to come back.
absolutely, most definitely.
Yes, my question is along the line of your question, and it's about the Third Reich. What led to Nazi Germany, I see this as all as very scary, a similar phenomena which led to the creation of the Third Reich, which grew in the universities, in the schools, through indoctrination of social Darwinism, of eugenics, of the concept of a master race, and all this was indoctrinated into young students' minds as they were growing up. I see a similar thing happening on campuses right now, especially, we see it manifested in anti-Americanism, in the culture of death and everything that's being taught, that there's no God and everything. It's being taught on the university campuses. My question is, what are you, and I guess this is a question for all of us, what are we doing to really change what's going on university campuses, in the classroom, to stop this, this indoctrination against our culture, against our values, against Americanism, and against personhood?
Yeah. So we don't speak specifically on college campuses, but I do know that education is sort of the front line of the battle, right? It's where it starts, and it's where it ends. It's how it gets in, and it's how it gets changed. I mean, that's just proven. Education is so important. And so we're not on college campuses right now, and I don't think we have any plans to be necessarily, but what we're dealing with is more the issues that I talked about, but also on the grassroots level in terms of the community, at the local level. How can we shift the culture? How can we start to revere the family again? How can we turn this around so that when a child, if he chooses to go to a university at all, right, and there's a whole movement about, well, do we really need to go to college, right? There's that whole work movement that's happening right now too. How do we prepare that child? How do we prepare that adult to go in and stand on truth when also what he's getting through public education all the way through is indoctrination as well.
It's not only college, it's all
all
schools.
the way back.
And,
Yes.
the left started, with Bill Ayers saying, if you want to control the future, you
Right.
control the minds of the youth.
Yeah.
And that's why he went into education, and he devised these studies of social justice education.
Absolutely, and if you look back at history, you'll see that socialism first went at Harvard. That was the first campus that it took over, and the Collegiate Socialist Society ISS started in the university system, and they broke out into labor unions, they broke out into teachers unions, they grabbed education, they went for science, they went for the media, they went for the church, they got the church, right? So they got all of these institutions, all of these things that are around us all the time are filled with this ideology. And so the only way that we can fight back against that is to go from the bottom up. We have so many conversations in the Personhood Alliance with our affiliates and me and my colleague, Roberto Garcia Jones, who's the president of the Personhood Alliance. We talk all the time about it's just more and more, like there's nothing, we can't, it's like David walking up to Goliath and trying to engage him on his own ground.
No, Goliath charging.
Or Goliath charging, yes. You can't. You have to be at the local level. You have to start to change the culture there. Because if you start that grass fire, then that builds up where you actually have enough pressure on politicians who are just, they compromise, they abandon, constantly, right? We hear all the time about the lack of integrity of the politicians because we're just not questioning. Yes, we're activists, we get in there, but if we could have communities that could come together and rise up together, a big movement, kind of like the Tea Party did back in 2010, that was a big deal. That was an organic movement, and a lot of people got involved in that. And what we're looking to do is that, but on a cultural level, on a level where we're going out into the communities to actually start to build support systems for people, to actually honor family, honor life, and get people to just be out, make connections with other humans again. We're so lost, we're so divided, right? And that's what Sanctuary Cities is about, and I'll talk about that in just a second. I have a question over, I'm gonna grab her. Sorry.
This may sound a bit sci-fi, but when you were talking about genetically engineering humans, when a child is conceived naturally and is born, it inherits certain characters, and so that when he or she grows up, they grow up to be either doctors or farmers or seamsters or laborers, whatever, or teachers, whatever the case may be, okay? Now, when these humans are, let's say parents are a choice, of course, as a parent, you want your child to be super smart, super human being. You want to have that child, so you're going to be, if you have that choice, you're going to want to say, well, I'm only one, so I want my child to be the super one. Everybody's going to make the same choice.
Right.
Will there be a future where you're going to have to start genetically engineering humans to also work in lower jobs? In other words, you got the super beings that are super smart and super human. And then you need also the laborers. You need also the ones that do other kinds of work. Not everybody can be a genius.
Yeah, the assumption now is that with the way that things are looking now, the conversations are happening, it will be the unenhanced humans that will do that kind of work. The work that is not pleasant, the work that is kind of on the ground, right? And that they will be a lower class. And that's why the transhumanist movement is trying to come in and say, you know what, we're the good guys. We want to make sure everybody has access to enhancements, and we want to make it a right. So that doesn't happen. And so they're trying to be altruistic about it. But that is essentially what would happen. And I think, yeah, what also happens is that you get to a point where, what was the movie? Gattaca, I think was the name of the movie. It came out in the 90s. And it was about people who you were only the people that were enhanced were important. And you had a mark on you. I haven't seen it in a while. You're nodding your head. You've seen it? Yes. It is a great film. Yeah.
Scary.
Gattaca,
I've heard of it.
G-A-T-T-I-C-A. Yeah. And
Because
the
Brave
term-
New World, it was
Yeah.
that book.
Yes, the term genoism comes from that movie, and that is a discrimination based on genetics. And that's what's going to happen. That's what's already happening with the ability to start to design our children.
Scary.
One
example of that is that I think now, today in the United States, 90% of Down syndrome population is gone.
Oh, that's a good one.
So they have
100%,
genetically
99%.
gotten rid of an entire population, just about, of children that aren't considered worth living. They're not worth a life.
Yeah, I think that was that Iceland who said they found a cure for Down syndrome? Because they
Yeah,
avoided it.
whatever you want to know.
Yeah, children diagnosed with Down syndrome, that doesn't mean they had it.
Right.
That just means they were diagnosed with that in
Correct.
their own. So,
That's correct.
Did it
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. Well, just a second. You had your hand up?
Yeah, sure. One of the things you were talking about was our weak politicians, and that's one of the things that we were trying to do here, and not just in this club, but throughout Queens, was to regenerate the Republican Party so they actually stood for the Republican values and principles.
Right.
All right. And that is something that is a work both in progress and a strategy moving forward, because we have very few Republicans in office, and those that we have are very weak.
Right. And I think that's shared everywhere. I mean, everywhere I go, I hear the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I think one of the big problems with that is that with all the government hacking, the government has everybody's communications. So you see a guy like Michael Flynn, who's really a hero, right? Who's pled guilty to a lie that had nothing to do with this fake story about Russian collusion, and you have all the crimes being exposed of the people that tried to frame him in the Trump campaign, right? So there's such, like, what family now, somebody that's not single, who has nothing else to lose, would even get into the game? Because you're gonna be attacked for, nobody is gonna come out squeaky clean anyway. And if they have any kind of thing, the major media is gonna make what they did to Kavanaugh, right? They did to Kavanaugh, going back to when he was 16 years old. And it's not even true most of it. But in the meantime, you have how many allegations against Bill and Hillary, and they are, people are just dropping dead who might have information. So the thing is, it's like you have to have a superhuman virtue and be courageous enough to do this. And who could withstand this?
Right.
Saint.
So it's the playing field is so bad. So I don't blame necessarily the politicians, because I believe they're all compromised, because Justice Roberts, we all thought he was going to be the one that would help overturn Roe versus Wade. They took him into a back room, and they must have said, "We got you on this conversation or that." So if they can get your
They have to have
conversations
something
anyway,
on this
anytime
side.
now, then that, because of that Pfizer and with Pfizer abuse, okay. So everybody, unless you're Jesus Christ himself, how are you going to withstand this?
Right, and I think that's where, again, for the Sanctuaries for Life project comes in, because we have to figure out how to get out from underneath judicial tyranny, and we have to figure out how to get out from underneath of these corrupt politicians. We have to stop kind of giving our faith over to that and take it back. We're a nation of self-governance. We have to remember that's our birthright, and there are many things that we can do at the local level that
And
don't
that's-
involve politicians at all.
And that's getting that county committee structure together. All right, 18 assembly districts in Queens, and the county committee structure in each of those districts, and literally taking over our own party, so that we don't have 4 or 5 people in a room making the decisions for all of us.
Sarah,
Yes.
to make that comment, you mentioned how, we're by yourselves. Absolutely, it's like the sheep, right? When you stand out there, you get slaughtered. You have to organize. That's one of the biggest words I've been using. This is the reason why I have this meeting. The reason why I have people like Sarah speaking is we have to organize and bring ourselves together so we have confidence that we will stand together. And how do you do that? There's different ways of doing it. One way is to do it quietly, right? Quietly build an organization. Just like our opponents did. They didn't just come out and say, yeah, I believe in this craziness and this evil. It was gradually done. I saw 30 years ago this whole idea of the homosexual agenda. I said it is anti-Christian. If you support this group, you're going to persecute the other group. And now after 30 years of organizing, They have the power. We have to do the same. We have to organize. If it means getting organized on a boat trip somewhere with all your good friends that will stand united, that's how you have to do it. And yes, they are watching you. If you put anything on paper or if you put anything electronic, it's evidence against you. So you have to speak and organize. Get back to what happens when they take away the phone. You know, they shut it down. Communication is shut down. You can't communicate with all your friends. You got to go the old-fashioned way, just like George Washington did. You know, George Washington didn't have the internet. They had who? Paul Revere, right? Paul Revere. We have to get that personal contact again. We got to organize. And Sarah is in my opinion, on the tip of the spear when it comes to the real issues here. We can talk about the streets and the potholes, okay, but people are dying. If little babies are dying in the womb, and the elderly are dying, and the sick are dying, and not dying, being murdered,
Yes.
okay, you're next. So you have to wake up and organize. Just a thought.
I want to take two more questions, and I want to talk about sanctuaries because I think this is exactly what this group needs to do right now. So, I'll go to you, and then you've had your hand.
A couple of points. I've been in this for over 27 years, running a pregnancy center. What you need to do is, it's all well and good to have all this tremendous information, but if you look around us, I think the youngest person here is 50 maybe?
No.
I'm 46.
Well, Tom Willis was
So what you're saying is, you haven't even, I don't know if you've attempted to get into colleges. We've gotten into the colleges because we invite young people to come and volunteer at our centers. So we did infiltrate Queens College, which is one of the most secular colleges in our city. Queens College, we have a very active Students for Life group. And that's the group that you really should be connected with to get your knowledge out there because they're courageous young people. They fought their people in charge at the college. They took them to court. They got Alliance for Defending Freedom to sue them. So they got their right to stand. Okay, that's one thing. And another thing we're not hearing about, and I'm preaching to the choir, we need to have young people and family. We don't hear it from the pulpit. The pulpit has an opportunity to talk about families, about all these
Sarah
things.
said that, though.
No,
She said the church has been taken over.
The church has been taken
We
over.
lost that years ago.
But we do have the human connection with our new pastor. We have a new pastor. I have an opportunity to get in Wyatt. There's a book that we learned about in May. You were there. Dawn was there. At a symposium, why is an abortion spoke from the pulpit? I plan on giving it to him next week because, they're finally getting some activities in our parish. Kids are finally coming back to church with their families. So that's the opportunity. But unless we get this knowledge disseminated to the Catholic schools, I have St. John's volunteering. I have local Catholic schools volunteering and public schools. So that's how. But I do need an executive director so that I can go out and do this because you can't take care of the world unless your home is organized. And I had an opportunity yesterday. My daughter, who's 9 months pregnant, was in an Uber car, going someplace at 9:45. She locked her keys out of the house, and she said, "Mom, the guy's driving like a maniac. I feel like I'm going to get killed." And I said, "Yes." She's okay. End of the story. But my point being, she says, "Mom, if something happened to my baby and I was okay, could I sue that driver?" Absolutely not in New York State because that child is not human. It doesn't have any legislative protection. And that's where we need to be on the legislative level. And that's why I need to get somebody working the bridge so that I can go with Dawn and with people that are committed to changing legislation. And our own city, our own county, where our own president says, we're a progressive party. I'm not telling a woman what to do with their body. This is the Republican Party in Queens. I mean, we need to work to reorganize. And you have to tell the truth, and it's not easy, but...
The governor himself
One
said.
more comment because you gotta finish
Those are
up and
questions.
it's
What do you
getting
need
late.
to do that?
One more question.
It's not a question. I have a suggestion. You've probably heard of it, but I don't know if you did. Relevant Radio is a radio station.
Yes.
In New York, it's on
1430.
1430 AM.
Okay.
And it's also on the internet, relevantradio.com. Right? And I think you should get in touch with them and talk over Relevant Radio because they'll put you
I
on.
was into
Because they put a lot of people like you on. And they're gone 24 hours a day. They go all day,
was on
and then they
Tuesday.
repeat it at night. So if you don't hear it in the day, you can listen
Good idea.
I listen to it all the time. They have some great shows on there.
And it's not only good for Catholics, but it is a Catholic station. But
Sheila
they have
Lagminas
a lot
is the
of
show
other
that she has a very pro-life show.
Sanctuary cities.
Sanctuaries. Sanctuaries for Life. This is a 3-step initiative that the Personhood Alliance rolled out at the same time. It's our big rollout when our affiliate Personhood North Carolina's Yadkin County Board of Commissioners voted to become a sanctuary county. It's the first full sanctuary county in America, and it was really exciting news. And I want to tell you about what that means. What it means in terms of the 3 steps that we have and how that differentiates us from a lot of the other initiatives that are out there. You probably have heard there have been some sanctuary cities that have popped up here and there. There was one in Texas, there was one in New Mexico, there was one in Utah. I think there's even a county in Utah. But our 3-step initiative is very different, and I want to tell you why. Step 1 is the initial resolution phase, and that is what North Carolina has done, and that is what our affiliate in Mississippi is about to do, and our affiliate in Nebraska is about to do, and 5 other states that I can't share with you right now, but this is growing really fast, and it's going to take off, and we're super excited about it. So the resolution phase is the first step, and that's basically whether you go to the city council or whether you go to the county board of commissioners, and you get them, you convince them, and we have all kinds of information available on our website about how to do that and how to identify what areas are ideal, have ideal characteristics to become a sanctuary for life. So you get your county board of commissioners, get your city council to say, the unborn are people, and we have the constitutional duty to protect them in our local jurisdiction so that they cannot be killed no matter what happens on the national level, on the state level, or with Roe. So you are defying the unjust law. You're defying the unjust ruling of Roe v. Wade. So this is the lesser magistrate. This is interposition, if you're familiar with those biblical terms. The end goal, of course, is to set that constitutional right, to stand on that constitutional right to self-govern. But it's also a faith thing, right? Government can't take away rights that it doesn't have any right to define. These are God-given rights. Certainly the right to life is something that's granted to us by our Creator. So in that first step, we're just making that declaration. We're establishing a foundation legally and morally for why we're becoming a sanctuary. And we're on purpose not setting ourselves up for any legal battles at that point. That's very strategic. So we don't have teeth yet. We're just setting the foundation. We're not inviting the battle. We're not inviting the enemy to come into our territory just yet. And that's really important, and we'll see why. So step 2 is taking that foundation and actually acting on it. And that's where the churches and the businesses and the community leaders and the local governance comes together and starts to build a culture of life. This is something the pro-life movement talks about all the time, kind of vaguely, like, well, we need to change hearts. We need to change minds. Let's make abortion unthinkable. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that look like practically in our communities? And we think we understand what that might look like across the board. And that really is getting the churches back out, getting the businesses back out to form connections, to start doing things like funding the local pregnancy resource center through the churches, doing things like as simple as designated parking spaces for pregnant women, but it also includes things like fatherhood and mentorship programs, and getting churches and businesses to work together to help support fostering and adoption and domestic abuse shelters and any ministry, any program that helps to honor family and honor life. And so that is the main part of step 2. Also, the important thing here, I think, is that we need relational solutions at this point. So we're not talking about political solutions at all. We're talking about engaging our communities to address why abortion is happening in that community, providing support, and most importantly, sharing the love of God with people, because these people are making decisions, they're living lifestyles that are leading to things like abortion, which I think everybody in here knows that abortion is a symptom. It's not the main problem. It's a symptom of of a sickness in our culture, and until we can climb underneath that and figure out what the roots are in the family, then we are not going to solve the problem. And so what we're trying to do in this second phase is really bring everybody together, get the community to actually be relational again, and actually form bonds, to form networks, to start to build and heal the people in that community and address the things that are part of that community that are happening that need to be solved. And so this is why step 2 is really an education step. So we have to understand things like personhood. We have to understand our constitutional right to self-governance. We have to understand real charity, getting the churches back out to reclaim that, getting back out into the streets. And also at this phase, because we're starting to build networks and we're supporting each other and we're serving each other, we actually start to raise up men and women who will go into local and state politics to start the non-compromise, right? To start the actual principled integrity that you talked about, to move that forward and to have a stand. And that's not going to come. You mentioned it. Like, how would you go into that lion's den, right? You can't expect any person to go into there. Well, I think if you start to heal the community and you start to have people out there organizing and supporting each other, those people are going to be raised up. And you can start replacing these people who are in your way, with things like personhood, with all kinds of different things that are going on politically. And this is also where the community starts to prepare the local authorities for step 3. And step 3 is very bold, and that's where the rubber meets the road, actually. So once a town or a county has matured enough in its development of the culture of life, and it's supporting people and kind of getting that groundswell going, and there's all of this churning, then it actually takes very coordinated steps to peacefully defy the unjust law. And what that means is protecting the right to life, prohibiting abortion from coming into that community using the local jurisdiction. And that looks different on that. And you also need to obviously be prepared for the legal challenges that are likely to come. Because what we're doing in step 1 is right now purposefully not choosing communities who have abortion clinics in them. We're not going for that. We're going for the communities that are red on the map. We're going for the communities where we have people in the city council and on the county commissioning board who are friendly, who are pro-life, who get it, who can be convinced that, we can do this. We need to make a stand. This is really the only way that we can fix this in our country. And so if you have those people, again, we have a number of ideal characteristics that we define for a sanctuary for life. And you can start moving that in your community and then get to the point where you're actually standing and making law that will be challenged if Planned Parenthood or someone decides that they're just going to come in and try to test what's going on. But if you can imagine for a second, right, we have an affiliate in Maryland. The only red county in the whole state is St. Mary's County, and she's in it. And she's super excited about Sanctuaries for Life because she just wants to stand. She said, I don't care if I'm surrounded by wolves. I'm going to be the only red county. I'm going to be the only person here that's going to do it. So we have affiliates like that. We also have affiliates that almost the whole state is full of red counties. And these are very, very ripe opportunities to start to create the grass fire. And so, like, for example, our affiliate in Mississippi has lots of irons in the fire right now, and they are actively identifying cities and counties for this and are going to start moving. And there literally are people coming from all over Mississippi to them. How can I do this? What do we do? How can I get started? And my organization, the education side, we're providing a training program that helps through our affiliates. This program is through our affiliates. So it helps towns and counties understand how to do this, what their rights are, what to prepare for, and then at that education phase, all of the materials are needed to start to educate the community, start to create the networks. How do you do it? How do you prepare for the city council meeting? We have petition templates. We have, resolution templates. We have everything we're trying to make available for people to get started in doing this.
So,
Yes.
5 more minutes?
Yes, I can hurry. So I think that the goal here, again, is the roadblocks, is to reclaim our right to self-governance. And in doing that, I think the important thing is that we do that after we have built the culture of life, not before. We're not just going defiance first. We're not doing defiance only. We're setting the foundation legally and morally. We're going out to fix our communities, to create the groundswell that we need politically and culturally. And then at the point where we are ready, we're coming in and saying, we will not let this here, and it will not come in. And here's what we're going to do to prevent that from happening. And that just takes everything off the table for everybody who is pro-abortion. Even the Republicans who are pro-life in name only, right? There's a lot of them out there.
Right.
And they aren't able to defend this because it's coming from the people. It's coming from the ground up. And so you start to, again, raise up people who are principled and who have integrity to start to replace the people that are in the way of making abortion illegal again. And also unthinkable. We're making it unthinkable when we go out into the community and we make relationships and we heal the wounds that have been created by abortion in our communities. Even in the communities that don't have abortion facilities, these people are traveling. There's webcam abortions. There's this scourge of abortion reaches everybody. You don't have to be the one on the table, you know. So I think it's really important for us to remember that initiatives like these are out there. We don't just have to look around at everything that's happening and feel overwhelmed and feel like there's nothing we can do, right? There's a lot that we can do. We've just forgotten that we have the power to do it. And so we're trying to push that forward right now across the country. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, you can go to our website at personhood.org. And there's a button across the top that says Take Action. You click on that, you'll see Sanctuaries for Life. We have some of our initial training materials already up there. There's the philosophy behind it, both biblical and constitutional. We have an FAQ there that's really good that helps answer some basic questions about the initiative. So I think in closing, sorry I got late, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this and learned. And
very much so.
Okay, thank you. I think this is what it looks like when the pro-life movement stands on a biblical foundation. I think this is really what it looks like when our strategies match our convictions, when our principles are carried forward into everything we do, both politically and culturally. And I just want to stress that abortion and every other attack on life is not a legal problem, it's a courage problem. These are courage problems. We need to stand up like the early church did, right? They didn't wait for the politicians and judges. They went out under heavy persecution despite the unjust laws. And that's what we're trying to do today, is replicate the early Christian way of shifting the culture, radically shifting the culture. And they did. They did. And we can too. And so that is our motivation. And I just want to close by saying that personhood, I think, really is a movement that acknowledges that our ways must begin and end with God's ways. And that when we move forward in our own way, we prolong the injustice.
I'd like to say thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
You come from all the way from the mid.
So if anybody, I can sign this. So if anybody wants a book, I brought a couple with me. I also am going to put some business cards here. Please take a business card and reach out to me if you want more information about what you've heard tonight.